This is the next in the series of the Streets of Paris event. In this event, I'm walking through constructing Paris-themed shops, and this particular video is going to cover the Café du Chat Noir, the Black Cat Cafe, and it's very similar in many ways to the chocolate shop, which was right before this, so I'm not going to go into all of the details that I had already covered in the chocolate shop, and I'm just going to highlight the differences when it comes to those items. But down in the description area, I will add information about where to jump to in the previous video to get to those items. So that way it's a little bit easier for you and you don't have to watch the entire chocolate shop video to just pick out those things. There's also going to be a separate video to go with this that's going to cover making all the food, which I made pretty much everything out of polymer clay. And I thought that would be helpful to just pull that out so this video won't be so long, and particularly if you're not interested in that part of it, or you're only interested in that part of it, you can watch that right after this or just jump to that one. And of course, I also have new image sets to go along with this, and I'll talk about them as I cover each different segment of the cafe. I'm going to start first with some of the architectural elements. Now, for the entire structure, that was in a previous video showing you how to put the 3 house kits together, so I'll leave a link to that in the description area below. And there's also a playlist of these, so it goes from the beginning and I keep adding as I add more videos, so you can also follow that. But I'm just going to cover some of the specifics for the cafe itself, and some of these are familiar from the chocolate shop. And the first thing is I've added these basswood supports to the ceiling. I did this on every single room. And there's going to be a lot of heavy glass cases on the boutique above. So I just went ahead and did that to make sure that I don't have any problems with the ceiling drooping. And then all of the trims that I have used on the inside and of course on the outside of the shops comes from this digital kit, this architectural trims kit. And it has trims for the inside and also trims for the outside. And there you can also see a better look at what the ceiling paper looks like. I thought it had this really cool tile look, so I thought that would be pretty on the top. And then the papers on the side are kind of a mottled cream. It's called mottled cream, but it's really kind of a yellowish color, and I thought that would be really pretty. And then I've got this checkerboard floor. Now that paper I've used before when I did the steampunk house, and I just love that paper. And I've also, just like the chocolate shop, I've gone ahead and extended the floor out. And that gave me enough room to get the bar and all the tables that I wanted to get inside. And in addition to extending the floor out, I also extended and created a trellis. So the wall on the side also goes out further, and created this trellis on one side. And of course, the other side is papered, just like the inside area. And again, those are the exact same things that I did with the chocolate shop. And as I mentioned before, anywhere I don't go into detail, I will give you the exact time spot to jump to in the chocolate shop video, so that if you just want to get a little bit more details on how I put something together, it'll be there, because I'm doing exactly the same thing. The only difference is paper. Now on the outside of the trellis, it's a little bit different. I am adding this little greenery, and it comes in a sheet. And you can cut it and kind of pull it apart, and it's really cool looking. So I've used some of that going up the trellis. And then I've also, just like with the chocolatier, I think I only did maybe 1 pot for the chocolatier, but here I'm doing 2. Those are wooden pots, and they're just painted a combination of brown and green and yellow, and I'm just tapping that on, stenciling that on randomly. And then I've used a couple of flowers from my stash, and then the leaves, those actually come off a vine, a little miniature vine, and I just cut those leaves off the vine and then use that for the greenery that you see coming out of the pots. And then in the chocolate shop, I had started putting a base around the whole structure, and I'd gone part way because chipboard's not big enough to do an area that would accommodate everything I needed. So I'm ending up using 2 different pieces of chipboard, and I go through that in the previous video. So again, I'll give you a timestamp for that. So now I'm adding the other side. So I've got this stone area all the way around the structure now. And I've used the same paper, obviously, and then pieced the 2 pieces together. But they're not glued in place, so it's easy for me to just pull these off and for storing or moving the structure. So I'll give you the timestamp for that. And then the next thing is I've added a front door, and this door is exactly the same as the chocolatier shop door. I've used the kit comes with the frame that you see there, so I've just painted a different color to get it to work with this with the chocolate shop, or with the cafe. And again, I have added a piece of stained glass in the top that I've printed on transparency film, and then just applied that to a piece of white paper, so you just get that really bright look of the stained glass. I've used the same fretwork screen that you see, and I've backed it with the faux plastic. So this is the same construction that I went through before. And then, just like with the chocolate shop, I took a picture of the inside of the cafe and then cut that out and put that behind. So that way, when you're looking into the shop, you will see, it'll look like you're looking into the actual shop as you look through that door. To me, the star of the show is the bar. And you might look at it and think, oh my gosh, that is so complicated, but it is not. It is pretty simple. It's basically just made of chipboard, and it's the decorative elements that make it look more sophisticated. And then, of course, all of the little stuff on top of it adds to it too. There are 4 separate pieces that make up the bar. There is a bar in the back with a counter. There's the bar in the front counter. Now, those are actually identical. They're the same size. They're made exactly the same way. The only difference is the front bar has a lot of decorative elements to it. And then behind the back bar is a piece of chipboard that is covered with some mirror type paper, and that is just glued to the wall. And then you have the soffit at the top. And again, it is just a couple pieces of chipboard. It looks great because it's got that beautiful metal piece on it. And it hides the tea lights that are underneath there that are lighting the entire bar. And of course, you can see them at the top lit. And those are, I've used my little trick like I did with the chocolatier, with just wrapping a piece of vellum in a circle, gluing it, and then putting that right over the tip of the tea light. And so that's how you get that really nice soft glow. So I'm going to walk you through how to build each one of those pieces, and I want you to see just how simple it is. I'm going to start by showing you how to put the soffit together, and it is made of 2 pieces of chipboard. You can see there it's a heavier chipboard. You don't have a heavier chipboard, you could glue together 2 or 3 pieces of thin chipboard. You just want something stiff enough so that it supports the weight of the decorative stuff, and then the weight of the tea light, so it doesn't bow. And you can see the measurements on there. One is going to be 1 3/4 inch wide by 11.5. 11.5 is the width of the room, and it's a tight fit. And I made it a tight fit so that when you get done with it, you can put it in place and it'll stay there, but you can still pull it out and replace the tea lights if you need to, or replace the battery if you need to. So that way it's not glued in place and then you're stuck if something goes wrong. And then the front part is 1 inch by 1.5 inches. So the top part is basically a little bit wider than a tea light. And so this might change for you depending on the tea lights that you use. And then the soffit front is tall enough, the 1 inch is tall enough to hide the height of the tea light, at least the part that's going to be underneath the soffit. Of course, the flame is going to stick up through the soffit. So if your tea lights are higher than 1 inch, the plastic part is higher than 1 inch, then you might need to make that a little higher. And so the next step is to create the holes for the tea lights. And I started out by, I laid them all out and I figured out that I could accommodate 7 tea lights. And so I decided, since an odd number, one would be in the middle of the strip here. And so I found the center point, and then I laid out all of the tea lights and just kind of made a mark where with the one in the center, and then a mark where I could tell where each one needed to be to have them equally spaced. And then I went in and made all the marks for the holes. And you need to make that hole big enough for the flame of your tea light to go through it. And that, depending on your tea light you use, that could be different. So you'll have to make that work for whatever you have. And then you're going to go ahead and cut those holes open, punch them open, and sand them and whatnot. They don't have to be really pretty because you're not going to see them. And then I glued the two pieces together. So it's going to be, it's like a L shape, and you're going to have the bigger, wider piece on the top, and then the shorter piece, probably depending on your tea lights, but the 1-inch piece on the front. And you can see how that looks here. And then I glued the tea lights in place. So even though you're going to be able to pull that out and replace the tea light, I still glued them in place because obviously they're going to fall if you don't. And just make sure that whatever glue you use is not something that's impossible for you just to pull that tea light out or pop it out, release it from the glue, and be able to replace it. And then that's going to stick up through the hole. And then, like I said earlier, I kind of used the trick I did with the chocolate chop, where I stamped the one for the chocolate chop, but this one I didn't. You could do that if you wanted to. I just cut some little strips of vellum and put them in a circle and glued them in place, and then glued them on top of the flame. And so that kind of diffused the light, and I thought that looked really pretty, and that covers up your hole so you don't, if it's ugly, you don't get to see anything. And then on the front of it, obviously I painted the whole thing black. And then on the front of it, I have this really pretty, this is a very heavy metal brass piece, decorative piece. And so I've glued that across the front, and that really dresses it up. And so now you can see how this soffit looks in place. Now you can choose where you want to hang it. I mean, you could put it all the way to the back. What I chose to do is kind of keep it forward a little bit over the front bar. And so you can put it anywhere in there. It's just depending on where you want it to be. So that's kind of a personal choice. It's just, that's how I happen to do it. And plus it made it a little easier to stick my hand up in there. If it was a little more forward, to stick my hand up in there and flip all those switches to turn all the lights on. Now I'll talk about the countertops for the bar, the one that goes in the back and the one that goes in the front. They are exactly the same size. So you would make the same cuts in terms of the pieces that will work for both. So the top of each of them will be 2 inches by 11.5, and the bottom or the front will be 4 inches by 11.5. Now, I did end up trimming a little bit off the edge, so it wasn't exactly 11.5, a little less than that, because I ended up putting baseboards down on the wall. So that meant that the area that had to fit, the counters had to fit on the floor, I didn't get the full width of the room. So I did have to shave a little bit of that off. So you're going to want to take that in consideration. If you do any kind of moldings on the floor, you'll have to consider that with maybe bringing the width down just a little bit. And just like with the soffit, I want it to be a very snug fit. And I actually did not glue these in place. They're pretty tight, but it's always nice to be able, something happens or falls off or there's any problem, it's nice to be able to pull these things out if you need to. Now, once I cut the pieces, I painted for both the front and the back. I painted everything black. And then for the countertop, I decided that I would like something that looked like marble. And so I used the faux marble paint treatment that I've demonstrated before, and I have a whole separate video that shows you just how to do this paint treatment. So I'll leave that link in the description area. And so I decided to use that as the top, and you can see I've kind of got this gray cream color going on. And then I glued the front and the top together. And so you can see it's simple. It's just that L shape again, simple pieces of chipboard. And then the other thing I decided to do is, because you're going to have a lot of weight probably on the counter. I mean, even if you think about plastic and stuff, you'd be surprised at how much the weight adds up. I went ahead and just cut a few pieces of chipboard and the height of the front, and a little, not quite as deep as the top. So if the top's 2 inches, I think I did it like 1 7/8, and glue those in place, and that'll just give you some support for the top of the counter. And then the other little thing that I decided to do is I ended up adding another little tiny strip of chipboard that was painted with the marble treatment in the front there, just to kind of dress up that edge where the two pieces are glued together. It just didn't really look that good. Another option could be to use some Dresden or some other little sticker trim or something like that. I thought it finished it up nicer. Now, at that point, I'm done. I'm not doing anything else because there's no point in putting a lot of decorative stuff on the front because you're not going to see it when the front bar is in place. Now, you might choose to only have a back bar. And if that's the case, then, you can dress that up as much as you want. Again, start with the same thing. I've got the two pieces, cut them to fit, painted them black, then did the treatment, the marble treatment for the top. And I didn't end up cutting the little separate strip because of the trim work I'm going to put on it. It covers that edge up, so I didn't need to do that. And the other thing I did for the front is added some panels, which I thought really dress it up. And so I ended up cutting 3 different panels, and you can see the dimensions there that I cut. And you can see the one lays on the other. And the final version, I ended up actually cutting another piece to go on top of that because I liked the 3-color look of the gold, then the black, and then again, pieces painted with that faux marble treatment. So in addition to the other pieces that I cut in the measurements, then I ended up cutting another one that was just slightly smaller than the one on the top. And then I glued those in place, and then you can see also I've used that beautiful metal trim again that I used on the soffit, and that kind of tied everything together. I glued that right on the front of the piece, and that completely hides that edge where the 2 pieces are glued together. And of course I put the supports underneath there so that it could handle the weight. And then I decided that I wanted a foot rail, and that foot rail is just a piece of it's a piece of metal tubing. And if you didn't have something like that, you could use a skewer that's painted to match your bar. And then I just used some bead caps to attach it to the bar and to make it pop out a little bit from a bar. Because if you look at a chair rail, it's not, or foot rail, it's not right up against the bar. So you can see how I added that. And I think that just really dressed it up. And then you can see the 2 in place with the one in the back and then the one in the front. And I think I left about an inch gap between the 2, as little as I could, because I wanted as much floor space as I could have for tables and chairs and that sort of thing. So you can see how easy it is to put this together if you can just cut chipboard and measure it out, glue this together, and then jazz it up however you want. And you can have something that really looks really cool and special. Now I'll cover the embellishments that you see on top of the back counter and front counter. And if we look at the back counter starting from the left side, you can see I've got a series of liquor bottles. And in front of that, I've got 2 trays with things that you might put in a cocktail. And I'll cover anything that's food related, I will cover in that separate video. So I won't go into the details of that. But you can see that there's labels, different liquor labels on all those bottles. And some of those bottles I've painted. And in terms of painting a bottle, so you keep that translucent look, I used alcohol inks, the alcohol inks that Ranger makes. And I even painted bottles that were already another color, just to either change the color or to darken the color, just so I would get variety in when you looked at them, because some of the bottles are actually the same bottle, but by painting it a different color, it looks like it's different. And a lot of those bottles are being carried by alpha stamps, and I also have a collage sheet, which I'll go into, that has all the labels. In the middle, you can see that I've got a cash register. That's something I've had for a long time in my stash, and I've just been waiting for the perfect situation to use it, and I thought this looked really pretty in the bar. And on the side there, you can see I've got some cocktail napkins, I've got the regular napkins that I'm using on the tables, and then I've got some menus. Again, all that stuff is in the collage sheet and the DigiKit. And then on the other side, I've got soda bottles. And so some of those are being carried by alpha stamps, others that I've just collected over time. And again, some of them I painted, some of them I added labels to, and like I say, all that is in the new sheets that I have. And if you look at that, the first one, the collage sheet, the Café collage sheet, this is filled with all kinds of posters, the menus, labels. There's wine labels, liquor labels, soda labels. There are cheese wheel labels, and there's also a sandwich board, Café sandwich board, and also the Chat Noir Café sign that I've modified so that it fits the cafe. And then I also have just separate labels. So if all you want are just a bunch of little miniature labels, bottle labels, you can get that. And then, of course, the DigiKit, which has everything. It not only has all the stuff on the collage sheet, it has all the labels, and it has a lot more stuff, like a whole bunch of different awnings, just like the chocolate shop. This has a series of different styles of awnings, and I've used one of which I've used, and you'll see that later on. and also things like the napkins and whatnot that you don't see on the collage sheet. Now the front bar isn't as busy because I figured I've got chairs that people would be sitting at the counter eating and drinking. And so if we go from the left side, I've got this little glass holder. I found that online, as well as the little coffee pot on Etsy. And then I've got a cake inside of a cake dome and plate. And then, of course, a slice of the cake on the counter with a little spoon, and then a little cup of coffee. And then in the back there are chocolate-covered strawberries and also some blackberries. Then 2 cocktails, and then a couple more of the bottles on the front, and some lemons. And then that's a juicer that I found online. I bought that on Etsy as well. So I'll cover all the food stuff and how I made that in that separate video. Now the mirror that is going behind the bar is, I believe, 2 1/4 inches is what I decided. Of course, that's going to depend upon your measurements of your counters, but I wanted it to go from the bottom, sort of sitting on top of that back counter, to up where you wouldn't see it any further if it were higher, because the soffit would block it. So I just wanted that gap between what you see between the top of the counter and the bottom of the soffit. So I think for me that ended up being about 2 1/4 inches. And so again, I'm starting with heavy chipboard, and I am covering it. I found this, it's like a wallpaper that's like, you can make a wall look like a mirror. And it comes in a roll, and I found that on eBay. And so that's what I used, because it allowed me to use, a solid strip. But Alpha Stamps is carrying something that's made by Tim Holtz, something on his line, that you could use, and with as much stuff as, if you're like me and you really junk it up like I did, with as much stuff up there, you could piece with the other foam mirror stuff, and you would never probably see where you pieced it together. Now, then I wanted to add some shelves on this mirror so that I could incorporate even more stuff. And the consideration that you need to have here is that, remember, when you look at the back bar, it's got bottles and stuff on it already. So if this thing is going to sit right behind the back bar, those shelves have got to be high enough that they are not sitting on top of those bottles. So I used that in consideration. So I figured out everything that was going to go on the back bar first, and then that gave me an idea of where I could put those shelves. Now the shelves are made from a piece of filigree, and then I used 2 pieces of filigree under each, and I folded them to make an L bracket, and that's how I mounted that to the back mirror. And then so I also trimmed the mirror out with some gold Dresden. Now the thing I will tell you about when you're gluing things to things that are papered like this, make sure that paper is really secure on the chipboard, because otherwise, even though you might say glue those shelves on really well, the stuff might lift up. And so the paper might lift up because of the weight of whatever you're gluing on, it pulls it away. So you really want to make sure that your surface you're gluing on top of is very, very secure, and it's glued down well as well. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is, as I continued on, I was like, well, I got all these bottles, where am I going to put my glasses? And I'm like, it'd be so cool to have a glass rack. And so that's what I ended up doing. I made a glass rack, and I made this using basswood. Now the square piece that you see there, that is the same, I believe it's a 1/4 inch each, 1/4 inch square basswood that I used for the ceiling supports. And then there's a flat piece of basswood. And so I just had the back as a bracket. Now that's what's going to glue to the back of the mirror. And then I have those slats going across, spaced out, for all my little glasses. And so then I ended up gluing that to the very center and up above where the cash register is, as high as I could go on that mirror. And again, that's why it's really important, because I'm gluing that on top of that Dresden, that gold Dresden. And if I don't have that Dresden down really secure, it will pull apart. So it's, with little plastic glasses, there's not that much weight. So I used, of course, E6000 for all of this to make sure that it was really secure. And then you can see how that looks with all the glasses slid in there. And your distance between the slats, you need to figure out first what kind of glasses that you're hanging. And so that sits just right above the cash register and the other stuff in the middle. Now, I decided that with the clear glasses, they wouldn't really stand out very much with everything going on because they're clear. And so I decided to frost most of them. And that really made them pop a lot more. And I thought that looked really cool. And I used something called frosted glass. If you've seen my other tutorials altering glasses and stuff like that, bottles, you've seen me use that before. And an easy way to do this, since you're using so many little things, is I took just a piece of junk board and I have some of this tape. Sometimes it comes in little dots. Sometimes it comes in a strip of tape, but it's the sticky stuff that's is got sticky on both sides. And so I just laid that strip down on this board, and then I was able to stick the glasses on top of that, and then I could spray them. And that way I didn't have to worry about how you're going to hold these little tiny things. So that seemed to work out really well. So that's basically the back mirror. And of course I glued all of that to the back wall. So I basically put the back bar in first and then glued that in on top of that, so I knew I had it in the right place. To create even more display area, I decided to add a glass wine rack, and I used microscope slides, glass microscope slides for each shelf. And then on the sides, that's also glass. It's 1 by 1 inch glass. It's called memory glass. It used to be made by Ranger. They don't carry it anymore. You can find it though sometimes on eBay or Etsy. And if you still want that glass look, of course you could use chipboard, you put something else there. But if you want that glass look, you could use some of the faux plastic glass that I use in the windows and simply cut out the squares and layer, say, 2 or 3 together to get more stiffness and thickness. And also use glossy accents smoothly and cover completely between each layer, because that way it'll dry clear and you'll still keep that glassy look. So that's another way to do it. And then I dressed it up with some metallic stickers. You see me use those all the time. And then further dressed it up with the feet on the bottom. Now, on the other wall, I decided that I was going to have a set of shelves to accommodate glasses and to accommodate plates. And again, I used the microscope slide and a little piece of metal that I folded as an L bracket and used that to attach the glass to the wall. And then you see I've got more of the glasses up there. And then the third shelf has got dishes, and I'm going with this red-white theme along with the black and white. And I painted those dishes using Ranger Patina paint. It's the garnet shade. And you'll also see that I've painted some silverware and other things. And that's just really great for plastic and metals and stuff. It sticks really well. The tables are made from an easy-to-assemble chipboard kit, and once I put them together, I painted them black, and then for a tablecloth, I used a doily. And then for the tables where there was going to be an umbrella, I needed more weight and stability to take care of the weight of the umbrella. So what I did is I took some polymer clay, and you can see there are 2 round pieces. One's a little bit bigger than the other, and they are sized to fit right underneath the bottom of the table. And you can see the image there, how they sit there. And of course they're painted, actually I think I may have used black clay to start with. And so I attached them underneath, just the swirls that are sitting there underneath. Now, if you didn't have polymer clay, you could use wood or something like that, round pieces of wood. And so that kind of gave the bottom a little bit more stability and a little bit more weight. And then the umbrella, the panels for the umbrella come in the DigiKit. And of course I needed a way to attach the umbrella to the table. And again, I made another piece, a little round piece that with a hole in it. So I just to mount in the center of the table. Now that's polymer clay. I made the hole before I baked it, and then used some wooden skewers, and then glued those in place after the clay was baked and cooled. And then you can see there where it's attached to the center of the table. Now, for the chairs, they also are a kit. They're stools, actually. And they come with a tall stool and a short stool. And so I used several sets of these. And I needed more short stools than I did tall stools. So you can cut the legs down on the tall stools to make more short ones, because I think I only used 4 at the bar. And so that's what I did. And then to make it look more like a chair, to create a back, I used this shell trim. And so I just cut it up, and you can get I think it comes with a couple of strips, and you can get quite quite a few number of backs with just the one set of strips. And then, of course, I painted it black, and then I used the red and white striped paper to decorate the seat of the chair. In terms of what's actually on the tables, I'll start with the ones on the inside. This first one here is the spaghetti dinner. And you can see that I've used the checkerboard napkins from the DigiKit. I've painted the silverware, the handles red. And if you don't go through painting this stuff, Alpha Stamps is carrying a set that is already painted. You can see glasses of wine, a wine bottle, bread, and a cutting knife. And then the white stuff is more Parmesan cheese. And in the center of the table are roses in a vase. The next table has a seafood theme. This plate and the plate that's going to be in the window that I'll see are the only items I did not make from scratch. So all of the other food that you see I made. Well, except for the flan there, that comes as a separate thing that I got from Alpha Stamps, but everything else I made. So the bread, the butter, all of that stuff. And then the other thing that we have is the cheese platter. So you have all these different cheeses and sausage and olives, crackers and bread. Then I did all the plating and all the napkins and all the silverware, all the same on all the tables. And of course, then you have some grapes and also wine in a wine bottle. And now on the outside, you have a table with lots of sweets and treats. You've got a tier of all kinds of treats. Now, those treats were the ones that I'd made in the sweets and treats videos, except for the chocolate covered strawberries on the top. And two of the people have some of the treats, and the third person has we could call it a raspberry strawberry sundae. And they've got a pot of tea and little cups. And then the other table has two sandwiches. They are ham sandwiches, and they're sharing a basket of French fries. And the other person is having a salad and a Coke. And then the people that are having the sandwiches are having a grape soda. The box window is one of the same ones you saw me use with the chocolatier. I used two, a larger one and the smaller one. And just like the chocolatier, I did remove some of the panes. The other one, I removed them all. And that's so that you could see the stuff inside better. And then also because of the signage I have in the window. And it's just a chipboard kit, easy to put together, easy to cut away what you don't want. And I'm pretty much decorating the exterior architecturally the same on all the windows, regardless of the shop. So I'm doing the same paneling. I'm using the same mold to make the decorative element in the panel. I'm just having each one have a different color scheme. And so just like with the other windows that I've been doing, it's lighted, except this time I did something different. I didn't go with the vellum trick. I used this large bead cap. It's bendable. It's very easy to open up wider or close more, and it's easy to bend the ends. And what I'm going to do is same thing as I did before, put holes in the top of the window, and the tea lights will be up there sticking through the holes, and underneath I will add this piece of filigree. And so the candle part of the tea light will be sticking into the filigree piece. And you can see there how pretty that looks, how nice and bright. And then you can see I've bent the edges a little bit here to have more surface area to glue them over the holes on the inside of the window. And here you get a look to see what a nice soft light it makes and how pretty it is there behind the lace. Now, that brings up the windows. Now I've used the same faux glass on the sides, and in the front, I've got this piece that has the cat and it says Café Noir. Now that's printed on transparency film, and it is in the digital kit if you want to use it, and it's sized to fit this window. And then you can also see that I've added lace just from my stash, something in the front and then some lace dripping down the sides. I thought that looks really nice for Café, and it framed everything really nicely inside. Now at the bottom, I have in the one corner, I have a bunch of cheese wheels. And then in the center, I have another seafood plate. That's the other seafood plate that I did not make. And then there's bread and then a flower arrangement behind that. Now, I wanted to, of course, fill the window with more things. And the way to do that was to add the glass shelving. And I like using glass because then the light can go through it and doesn't get blocked. And I'm using another one of those memory glass pieces. It's a square piece. I think it's I'm thinking 2 by 2 maybe. But of course you could use the microscope glass slide, and I showed you in the previous video, the chocolatier, how you could marry 2 of them or more using filigree, so you could make a bigger slide. And then you'll notice you have to make a back for the kit. Does not come with a back, so you have to cut a piece of chipboard for the back. And I'm using the striped red paper, the same paper that was on the chairs. And you can see I've added 2 of the shelves. Now the shelves were added based on what was on the bottom. So I put the stuff on the bottom first, and then I used that as a guide to figure out how high up I needed to put the shelves so that they wouldn't interfere with the stuff on the bottom. And so both the shelves have things like wine bottles, bread, cheese wheels, and then behind them are posters from the digital image kit. And then that glues onto the back, and that's the finished window. In wrapping up, I'll point out a few other little details. The first thing is the sign. I used the same type of swirl filigree, or not filigree, but swirl chipboard, die-cut chipboard to hang the sign as I did for the chocolatier sign. And then there is a sandwich board outside. You see a little kitty sitting next to it, and that comes off of either the collage sheet or the DigiKit. And I just printed it twice and mounted it on some chipboard so that I could marry the 2 together and make the little sandwich board. And then inside I've added lots of posters. You see on the left side of the wall, I've got a couple of posters from the collage sheet, and you see another kitty sitting on, a little black kitty sitting on the stool, because black cats are always welcome in this cafe. And then you can see the other side of the room, I've added some posters on the left side of the wine rack by the bar, and then also one right by that table. This wraps up the construction and assembly of the cafe. In the description area below, you'll find all the timestamps for the chocolatier video for any further detail on the elements that are the same for both shops. You'll also have links to any other related videos that go with this, and also the link to the video where I demonstrate how to make all of the food, and also the link to the companion blog post where you'll find the complete supply list. Most of the things that I've used Alpha Stamps is carrying. Link to tons of pictures, information on the collage sheets, and also that stained glass image I used in the door. You can download that. So next we're going to be moving upstairs to the dress shop.